and welcome to another edition of Did You Know Doctor Who? What you may not know about Doctor Who. This time I'm going to have a look at one of the most popular and one of the most beloved Doctor Who stories ever made, and one of the most popular Fourth Doctor stories ever made, and in my opinion certainly one of the best Fourth Doctor stories ever made, The Talons of Weng-Chiang. I hope you enjoy. The working titles included The Foe from the Future and The Talons of Griel. The former would become a big finished story. The Decaying Master was originally going to be Weng-Chiang, however production didn't want the Master to be a surprise villain twice in one series. Despite this, there are some minor moments which are kept from the old script. Magnus Griel's lair beneath the theatre, his deformed face, the mask he used to hide it, and a climactic scene in which the mask is torn off to reveal his true face are all based on the Phantom of the Opera. Another allusion, and more obviously, is that this story is heavily influenced by Sherlock Holmes, even to the point the Doctor wears a similar outfit. Ironically, Tom Baker would go on to play Sherlock Holmes after Doctor Who in The Hounds of Baskerville. This is the only time the Fourth Doctor does not wear his famous scarf. It is also one of two times that Leela is wearing normal clothes. According to Louise Jameson, the scene where Leela and the Doctor climbed down into the sewers took numerous attempts to film. The first attempt went perfectly, but a crowd of spectators were watching and a little boy shouted, "Go on, Doctor!" So they tried several other takes, but none of them were as good as the first. Eventually they decided just to use the first take and simply edit out the interruption. This is Louise Jameson's second favourite story, her first being The Sunmakers. Ironically, Louise Jameson didn't have a happy time filming the sewer scenes as she was suffering from glandular fever. Not only did she have to contend with thrashing about in the water, but she discovered that the undergarments which made up her costume became partly transparent. A large pile of straw is seen in the road as Weng-Chiang searches for the time cabinet, and it was placed there to cover a modern car which had not been moved off the street despite requests from the production crew. This serial is what Christopher Eccleston watched in preparation for his role as the Ninth Doctor. Due to racial controversy, Canada refused to air the story out of fear of offending the Canadian Chinese. It was also banned in Los Angeles for similar reasons. The Giant Rat was inspired by a line in the Sherlock Holmes story, The Adventures of the Sussex Vampire, where Holmes alludes to the Giant Rat of Sumatra. Whilst not in this serial in particular, a poster of Chang's show appears in the future episode, The Next Doctor. Robert Holmes preferred breaking the story in two, with the first 4 episodes being about Chang, while the last 2 are about Mr. Singh. In essence, it's 2 serials in one. Following this story, Tom Baker claimed that the next one would be his last. Of course, this wasn't to be. For whatever reason, plenty of production shots and even official merchandise shows that there are 2 Mr. Sins, instead of just one that appears in the story. And that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed. The Talons of Weng-Chiang is probably one of my favourite Fourth Doctor stories by a long shot. I absolutely love this story. It's definitely got that Sherlock Holmes feel to it, which is probably one of the reasons why I really like it. I am a fan of Sherlock Holmes. But also the acting is just fantastic. I think Tom Baker is probably at his best here. And I really like the villains in this. Mr. Sin is a creepy little doll. And he's just a really fun character in general. I think Chang is also quite an interesting figure. I think there's plenty of interesting characters in this story, and the mystery definitely builds up for the whole story of where it's going and what it's going to lead into. It's probably one of the more action-packed Fourth Doctor stories. The final story is, well, filled with explosions and lasers and what have you, and for its time, it must have been thrilling to see. I think this is definitely a story that has somewhat got a bit of a problem when it comes to the modern take. In the sense that, well, let's be honest now, there are some iffiness to it involving the fact that a white guy is playing an Asian man. Now, obviously, I'm not that fussed about it, but I can definitely tell why there's some controversy over that. And, of course, some of the dialogue is a bit iffy. But then again, something that you have to understand is that at the time, this was a lot more accepted. Plus, if you really think about it, being in Victorian London, I don't think people would be that caring towards other minority groups or other ethnic groups, let's be honest now. So there is something that you need to point out, that there are some realistic aspects to it, which, might be a bit distracting to some. And I do think that the whole idea of a white guy being cast as an Asian man, and he even having makeup applied to his face to make his eyes look very Asian, is a bit awkward, I won't lie. That said, just because of those problems, it doesn't take away from the fact that this is a very, very good story and a very well acted story. Definitely one of the best Doctor Who stories out there, in my opinion, and definitely one of the best Fourth Doctor stories by a long shot. Obviously, Period of Mars is my personal favourite, but this is probably my top 3. Up there with Genesis of the Daleks and, of course, Pyramid of Mars. This is just a truly fantastic story, and I totally recommend it. And yes, I will say there are some awkwardness involving the racial stereotypes and the racial issues, but if you can look past it like I do, it's a fantastic story. It's a fantastic piece of work for Doctor Who, even if there are some awkward moments like the giant rat looking kind of weird. But that said, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Did You Know Doctor Who, and I'll see you next time.